Hello, everyone. I'm Pierre Giraud, from France, and I'm a hot member, and I'm the main developer of the tasking manager. I will uh, explain today what's in the code of the tasking manager so that probably developers can help me maintain this tool. Um, so we'll go through the GitHub uh, repository, and I show you what's in the files and explaining what's the different files are doing and how it's architectured and structured. So we'll start from the beginning. Here you have the tasking manager repository, which you can find on the HOTOSM organization. So the name of the project is OSM Tasking Manager 2. Just be aware that there is another project with the same name, but without the 2. It was the V1, so it's deprecated now, and this is the main repository you want to check out. So here you have the different files, and you have a README here explaining how you can install your own instance of the tasking manager. I won't go through it now, but
how good are you in maintaining the documentation? Is it up to date?
It is up to date, yes, and sometimes people come and say that something is wrong in this documentation, so we try to fix it, but it should be up to date. And recently, people used this documentation to create their own instance, so it should be working. You have a lot of information about how to create the database, how to set up the application, and so on. So everything is there. If you have problems, just tell us and we'll fix it, and you will help you create your own instance.
This looks like Mac.
It should be. I don't know about Windows, but it works on Linux, and it's. I think this documentation is made for Linux, and there's some tips for Mac, which is a bit specific. I don't know if any user created their own or is told their own instance on Windows.
Okay.
Maybe it works.
I don't know. So here's
the main files.
We'll find
Find
the
Tasking
tasking manager.
manager.
What I
What
want
I have to say to begin with is that it's a
pyramid
application. So it's created using the pyramid framework, which you can find on the official page here. So if you have troubles with pyramid itself, you will find documentation in the Pylon's project pages. This is a framework in Python. It's a bit different from Django in that it doesn't offer everything built in, so you have to choose your own template engine, the ORM engine you want to use, and here we are using for the tasking manager, we are using SQL Alchemy for the connection with the database, and we are using Mako as the template engine. So it's typical. It's structured as a typical pyramid
application.
application.
So you will find,
as always,
setup.py
file.
This is where
Currently the different versions of the package we are using in the application is set.
So you
will find that we are using SQL KME, and for using a specific version, we are also using the Macro Pyramid package and some other packages that are needed for the task manager to work. So if you need a new package, the idea is to add it here and to load the setup to get the new package in your virtual environment. What is said in the documentation here is that we work in a virtual environment to use the application. So every package needed in the application will be in a specific environment in your system, not to pollute the system Python environment. Another important file here is development.ini, in which you will find the different configuration variables for the applications to work. You shouldn't have to modify this file, but you will have to create a new file which is called local.ini, in which you will have to set up the URL to the database. So it's already explained in the documentation. Here. So it says that you will have to create your own local.ini file in the project, and you will have to set up the URL to the database. So the database is actually using PostgreSQL and PostGIS. So now, if we go deeply in the code, there's an OSM-TM directory in which you will find the different Python and static resources which are used in the application. The first important file, in my opinion, is the model. It is where the database is described, and this is where we are doing the mapping between the database tables, relations, and the Python objects. So for example, we have here a user class which is mapped to the users table in the database. So here you have the different fields that will be in the database and how they will be used by the Python application. So you have a class for user, you have a class for project, here it is, and you also have a class for task, and you have the different relationships between the different tables. For example, here, in order to know which are the different tasks, so the grid cells for one project, we set a relationship between task and the project table. So if we want to access to the tasks property of an instance of this class, we will get all the tasks of this project. Um,
So these are SQL Alchemy models. Do you also use SQL Alchemy to then create the tables? Are they generated, or do you have a separate schema?
so yes, no, we do create the tasking manager tables by scripts, if this is what you were thinking about. And for that, we have here a script which initializes the database. So in the documentation, once again, when you will create your instance of the tasking manager, you will launch a script that will populate, create the structure in the database, and then populate it with simple data.
Do you use migrations to manage versions of the?
Yes, as well. This one is not documented, unfortunately, but I'm using Alembic, which is a framework on top of SQL Alchemy, which helps migrating data. For example, if there's a new field that I want to add to a certain table in the database, I put it in a script in Alembic so that if I want to upgrade a database in an instance, I can do it with scripts. So for example, I had to create different scripts. For example, a while ago I had to, let's find an easy one. For example, there were a new due date added to the project table, and I created this script. And if someone is already running an instance of the tasking manager with an old version of the tasking manager, upgrades the code, using this script, this person will be able to upgrade the database as well. So unfortunately, it's not documented for now. I hope it will be soon.
But I assume this is just using standard Alembic conventions.
Yes.
Setting up new migrations, executing
Yes.
migrations, and so on. So yeah, you know
Yes.
where to find that documentation.
And this script is not handmade. It's generated actually with Alembic.
Nice. Do you think it's worth going through some of the key models? So we looked at user, we looked at projects. What do you think are the most important concepts within the task manager?
Okay. So we have user, we said it already. We have project, we saw earlier, and we have task. So the task is the grid cells or arbitrary polygons, but it's the single work cell the user will take, will lock, and then they will tell that it's done or not. So this is the task, and for each task, we have entries in other tables, which are task states. It keeps a history of each change in the state of task. So we have different states here. Whether it's ready, it's done, validated, invalidated, or removed in case of splits, for example. And in this table, for each task, we keep an history, a record for each change in this state. And we have the same for logs. So when people log a tile, when they say, I want to work on this tile, a new entry in the task log table is created. So here we also have all the history of the logs of each task. Task comment is the same for comments. So when you add comments, whether it's
free comments or when you validate or mark it as done, it's put in this task command table.
But when you talk about validation, these tasks from comments, they are separate from direct messages.
Yes, it will be different.
Yes,
Yeah,
okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
And linked to project, here we have a table which is called area. It should be here. So for each project, we have the area of the project, which is in a separate table.
Is that the bounding shape?
Yes,
And
and we also have priority areas for each project. This is the pink polygons that are showing in the task manager. The reason why I decided to put it in a separate table is that I intended to share areas between different projects. This is not available currently, but it should be possible.
So you can have multi-stage workflows and so on.
For example, and you could have a project on a specific area or buildings and on the same area a project for roads. For example. So it's possible to do it with the current model, but it's not implemented. And I think we also have translations for descriptions, instructions, and so on. And we have a different table for the different translations. We also have a table for license. Yes, with the descriptions and we can have a list of projects that are linked to a specific license.
This is imagery license.
Yes, exactly. And we also have a class for messages. The messages you see in your inbox in the tasking manager are here. So when you ping someone in task comment, it will create a new entry, a new record in this table. So everything about the database is here in this file. The next Python files that are important are the views. And first of all, the different routes to views are set up here in the init file. And here you have the list of different routes available in the application. So for example, when the user connects and goes to this kind of URL, it's redirected to this view. So for example, I will take a simple one. Here is the URL you go to when you go to a project page. So when you go for example, here, it says to the application that it wants to show the view for the project which ID is 1018. And here, Pyramid goes to the view which is set here in OSNTM views project. And here you have the root which name is project. What it does, it will render using the Mako template, which is project.mako, given all these parameters, all these variables here. So, for example, here what we do is we get the project given the ID which is given in the URL. So we do a SQL Alchemy query to get the project, the record in the project table which is for this given ID. We do some checks so that if the project doesn't exist, we are redirected to a specific page. We do some stuff. We get the priority areas, which we will store in features. In a features variable here, and we pass it to the template as a priority areas variable. This is an example. We also get the history from the state, from the table state here, where we get all the history of the tasks for this project, limited to 20 records. And we use it in the template. So now if we go to the template itself, I will switch to the new. So here we're back to OSMTM. So we have views here and we have template. So I can go to the project.macro template, and I will see something that is not really easy to read, but if I look at history, it's a bit specific. Okay, let's priority areas. So here, the priority areas, which is GeoJSON, actually is put in JavaScript variable so that it can be displayed in the map layer. So here is how the templates work, and in each template we can include other templates. So it's the case for history, for example, to display the activity here. This is from the history variable from the Python code, which is displayed using a second template included in the first one. So if I go to templates, so it's tasks history.macro, and here we have a template dedicated to this kind of display. Questions
about displaying user inputs? Do you how do you clean or escape user inputs when you display stuff, for example, comments?
What do you mean by inputs?
When people post comments, and that is then going to be, when it's displayed, it's going to be part of the templates. Do you sanitize people's? Do you strip HTML? Do you? Essentially, what are the security practices around your the display of information?
Okay.
With submitting forms and these.
We have a package. To clean the HTML or scripts, tags, or something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, it's. Bleach. I've seen this earlier. Bleach is doing.
Yeah. And is that something you do explicitly as you're printing variables in your?
Yeah.
Is that something that happens?
No, I have to do it manually.
Yes.
So I try to factorize as much as possible, but if I search for Bleach, I will find many. See here, this is the user messages template, and I have to do it manually.
Yes. No, it's clear. That makes sense. And then also in terms of templates, how do you you're using jQuery? I assume there's nothing specific to jQuery that relates to pyramids. It's just standard jQuery as part of your templates.
Yes.
How about CSS? Do you generate CSS or do you?
Okay, the CSS is compiled. If it's what you mean, yes. So the CSS is actually a less file, which is then compiled to CSS. So here, for example, we are using variables in the less file. So the file here is main.less. We import less files from Bootstrap, and then we have different other CSS files that we import, and then we use variables like that. We use nesting, such as this, and this is compiled to CSS at the end, and this is documented as well. So here, we compile the file to CSS, which is used in the browser.
Cool. And then finally, also in terms of displaying information, you talked about translations. How do you translate? How do you display translated, or how do you manage and display translated strings?
Okay. Let me find an example. In templates. So base, I think I will find something. Find something. Okay. So this file, user menu.macro, is intended to do this here in the navigation bar. So for example, here we have a string which is translated. So we use this underscore notation here, and we put the string, and we interpret it as a macro variable. So then we have a tool that extracts every single string which needs to be translated, and it creates get text files. I think it's PO files, and those files are sent to Transifex so that they can be translated by anyone.
So when someone builds a new feature which requires new strings, how do they handle that? I guess they start by providing an English translation as part of the code.
Exactly. Yes, and we usually use English in the code itself, and it will be sent to Transifex manually by the administrator of the application.
Okay. Which is good.
No. Trajan is doing the translation part of the application.
Cool.
About the JavaScript, you will find the JavaScript here in the static directory JS, and you will find several files for the different pages or part of pages. I'm not really proud of the JavaScript part of the application. It's not compiled. It's a bit ugly. It could be improved, but you will, for example, here find all the code which creates the map the leaflet map and the different controls you have when you click on the feature, how the features are styled, etc., etc., and how you select task, how you lock. You can lock the tasks. So it's huge, but here is where it is.
Yeah.
It could be improved. It could be a bit more structured.
Did you write it all yourself?
Yes.
Is it not sort of taken from any sources? Or?
No, it's written from scratch.
Unit tests.
Unit testing, yes, it's also documented. So when you write code in the test manager, you are invited to create tests to show that the code you wrote is doing a kind of job, and to ensure then that other stuff created by someone else is not breaking the current code.
And also, just to make it explicit, if you're going to send pull requests, please run unit tests before you send a pull request.
Okay, so there's a specific paragraph here in the documentation telling you how to create the database for the test, because they require a testing environment. There's a specific local.test.ini file, such as we did already for local.ini. And you just have to run this command. And if you do it in your console, you should have no test failing. And if you send pull requests that don't break test, I will be happy. And as Martin said, if you send pull requests with new tests, I will be super happy. So the tests are here in the code, and we have as much as tests as possible. So for example, when someone creates a project, we have different tests checking out if the person has the right permissions, etc., etc., and if the form is not correctly filled, then it will create an error, etc. So there's a bunch of tests. I try to add tests as soon as I create new code, or if I fix a bug, I create a test to show that the bug exists, and then that I fixed the bug.
Do you use tools to test code coverage? To test coverage?
Yes, we do as well. There's, I think the package is called coverage, and when we create a pull request, automatically it sends some things to a service which calculates the testing coverage. So it's not perfect. It's 95% of coverage of the Python code.
I would say that's a pretty spectacular score. Testing exhaustively is hard.
Yeah. So each time someone creates pull requests, let me find one which is breaking tests. No, it doesn't mean that it's breaking the test. It just means that it cannot be merged.
Right.
Oh no, you're right. The the automated tests are failing, so we can go there and figure out. We can go actually here. Yes, and we can figure out why the tests are failing. So if the tests are failing in a pull request, nobody will be able to merge the pull request. So for example, here, tests are failing because the syntax is not correct. So
Because of white space.
Because of white space. There is also a linter for the Python code which checks if syntax is correct given a specific query. We also have test failing. Yes, we have four failing tests.
That's as part of this pull request, or
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. This one is on another example. This is not valid Python code. Of course, there are permissions checks in the tasking manager, and this is for most of them done here in this file, where we check what the different permissions are, what we call ACL in the pyramid framework, and you find it in the views. For example, only people with the project edit role or permission can create a new project. And we have different roles like that.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
I think we
that's
covered it all. If you have other questions,
how can people reach you?
Where should
People go on IRC, or where can people ask questions about it?
On IRC, using the hot channel on the hot mailing list, and in GitHub actually.
Yeah.
You can ping me, I think, in GitHub, or create an issue and then ping me using the messages in GitHub.
Good call, Robin. Are we making use of tags, branches?
So this is a GitHub code. So every time you want to create or fix a bug or create a new feature, I invite you to create a branch specifically for that, and to send pull requests. I'm trying. I'm doing my best to read the pull requests and to send comments to people who do so. We have already many contributors to the code, and we try to merge as much as code as possible. About the releases, I'm trying to release as often as possible. In general, it's every 2 months. It depends on how much code is in the newer version, but I'm trying to do it as often as possible. But this is a job for me. Developers don't have to care about this. I think that's it.
I think we covered it. Thank you very much, Pierre.
Thank you.